Today we are going to be discussing the genetic disorder of albinism and its repercussions in the world around us. And this is by Gabe Hope. Discovery. Albinism was discovered so long ago that there is no way of knowing who the first to learn of the disorder was. It is generally accepted that Sir Archibald Edward Garrod was the first to research and collect data on not only the visual aspects of the defect, but on all the symptoms. Since the defect is so visually noticeable, the act of discovering albinism is also very hard to pinpoint to a singular event. Archibald was the first scientist to record data and research the defect publicly in his book, Inborn Errors of Metabolism. Any history surrounding the disease is not stated with any amount of certainty. Since it is easily identifiable, early history of the disease seems to be limited. It has been recorded as far back as the time of the Roman Empire, and in the year 1908, Garrod began his work with the defect, and since then it has been divided into two major types. Awareness of the defect and the effects have picked up recently with a better understanding of genetics, helping with the ability to provide clarity on the defect. Diagnosis. Since albinism can cause severe eye problems for the affected, when an infant is born, an eye test is necessary. An ophthalmologist can be brought in to correctly assess the situation, since these doctors specialize in procedures to identify the problems associated with ocular albinism. Regular eye tests throughout the childhood can help in identifying the defect as well. Obviously, to diagnose oculocutaneous albinism, there must be a lack of pigment in the skin, hair, or eyes of the child. Genetics of the disorder. Oculocutaneous albinism is located in the 11th chromosome and affects the TYR and other genes by mutating it and changing its design job from both parents usually. In ocular albinism, the defect seems to be inherited from a mutation present in the X chromosome. This form almost always occurs only in men. 1 in 70 people are thought to be carrying the gene. However, an estimated 1 in 20,000 are born with oculocutaneous albinism, while 60,000 males are born with ocular albinism. Albinism is an inherited disorder that is only received through a mutation of one of several genes in the body. It is a mutation that attaches and affects one specific gene in the body, usually attaching itself to the gene responsible for the enzyme that produces melanin. Prenatal tests. Until recently, it was thought to be impossible to perform a prenatal test on the possibility of any form of albinism being present in the body of an infant. New technology and a better understanding of genetics has led to tests being achieved by light and electron microscopic examination of melanogenesis in fetal scalp biopsies or by molecular genetic tests. The TYR can be identified either by direct screenings for mutations or a combination of different options. Signs, symptoms, and conditions tested. When it comes to oculocutaneous albinism, it evenly affects both sexes and disperses over all ethnic groups. Ocular albinism, however, is found in most cases only in males of all populations. The signs and symptoms of albinism usually involve the skin, hair, eye color, and vision of those affected. The skin is most visible and recognizable and can be detected earlier if large freckles-like spots form, moles without pigmentation, and the ability to tan or excessive sunburn. Hair can be very dark or very light depending on the mutation, while also being easily affected by natural conditions around. Eye color can range in color, but it can also change throughout the lifespan of a carrier. The disease is not included in the conditions the Missouri tests for in newborn infants. Treatment and life expectancy. There is no cure or correction for this disorder, and most treatments are just aimed at easing the pain of most symptoms. Correct eye care and the use of sunscreen and other protectants are easy and reliable treatments for the symptoms that are present. People that live with the disorder of albinism, both major types, can expect to live a normal lifespan as the defect has little to do with the actual health of a human being. Cool nuggets of information. There have been a few famous people in history to have albinism, including the first albino model, Connie Chiu, and Grammy Award-winning artist Johnny Winter. The movie Powder is about an albino boy who is trapped in his own home and is finally released into the world where no one wants to be his friend. The boy seems to have powers, and the entire plot revolves around the idea of accepting others and advancing hopes in humanity. A simple YouTube search can find a number of testimonies on living with albinism, as well as TED Talks and interviews on the same subject. Suggested readings. The first suggestion is a link to the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation. It's their official site that contains several articles and important pieces of information with dealing and thriving with the defect. The second suggestion is a link to a site that lists out several ways in which people can treat and improve social standings of people with albinism, as well as ways to get involved around the country. And the last is a YouTube clip that was from a TED Talk, which a speaker who has albinism discusses the ways in which he doesn't value himself any less and instead embraces his own uniqueness. Finally, listed below are a few of the sources I used throughout the creation of this presentation. This concludes the presentation. Thank you so much for watching it, and I hope I was able to educate you more on the disorder of albinism and the ways it affects the world around us.